And what's up, everybody? I'm back with another video game review. Today, I'm going to be reviewing today's going to be a mega game review. I haven't done one of these in a while. Before my birthday, which is a while ago now at the time of this video coming out, my good friend Jeffofthemellows gifted me a Switch game. None other than the Jurassic Park Classic Games Collection, which was released, I believe, 2023, but contains games. Try not to sneeze. Contains games from really all from the 90s. There's the NES version, which I'm not going to talk about in this video because I did a full-on review of it before. There's the Super Nintendo version. There's the Sega Genesis version. There's two Sega Genesis games on there. And then there's two Super Nintendo games on there as well, which are different. And then the handheld versions of all those are also on there for 7 games total. So I'm not going to do a whole deep dive into the handhelds games because they are the same games as their console ports, so I decided to play the console ports. Again, I also won't be touching on the 8-bit version, which is the NES version, because I did a full-blown review of that before. So this review is going to mainly focus on the Sega Genesis games, which are just the Sega Genesis version of Jurassic Park, as well as Jurassic Park Rampage. And the Super Nintendo versions, which is just, again, Jurassic Park, and JP2, The Chaos Continues. So, here we go. Let's just jump right into it. So both these versions are pretty similar in quality. The Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo were close competitors in their time in the early to mid 90s. So it does not surprise me that they are about the same as far as like graphical quality level. Quality level in general, they're both about the same. The Genesis version of Jurassic Park is more of a side scroller. Whereas the Super Nintendo version of Jurassic Park is more of a top-down 3D, like walk around type game where you do both of them, which though focus on combat. Whereas in the JP2, The Chaos Continues, as well as JP Rampage, I think I really mostly both side scrollers with some pretty a little bit 3D capabilities as well, with kind of their combat style and like navigations and stuff. So there's that. But these games, I will say, all feel very cheap. Ports of movies to video games, especially at this time, were not great, to say the least. So it does not really surprise me that these are not the greatest as far as like effort or quality. I mean, we'll start with the Super Nintendo version, for example. Like the hints that these random ass hints, they just get in the way. It's really, really hard to navigate because there's a bunch of invisible objects that just block your path. Or in some cases, you're trying to cross a bridge that you can cross in one direction, but you can't cross it in the other direction, which that is really weird. And also just like there's no weapon swap available at all, which is something that you can do in these other games, which was really, really weird. And then in like also in the Chaos Continues, I mean, it's a lot of the same. Because the combat in some of these are very, very, very specific. And like some of the contact points that you need to either land a hit or move farther into a level or complete a level or do this or do that or do this or do that. It's all very specific. I think it's JP2, The Chaos Continues, where You'll get to the end of a section of a level and there will be an opening in like the wall or the grass, or there will be a hole to go into something. But you have to be standing at a very specific point in order to go through there. And also if there's like raptors nearby, which I mean there are a million, there has to be at least 2.5 million raptors on this island. And they respawn if you go in one area and then come back. So you got to clean them out each time, and then like the female raptors are much stronger than the male ones, which is really weird. Which I didn't understand why they're like pretty much just like bigger bullet sponges, which is really weird. But like if you don't clear it out, if you're not standing in the specific area, you can't continue, and then you might get lost, especially if you're like your first time playing. You might get lost because you don't know if that's actually what you're supposed to do, and then you go back through the whole level, you die, you figure it out 500 more times, and eventually look up a walkthrough like I did, and you see you gotta stand at a specific fucking point to move on, and you're like, what the fuck? Then you're going back to another direction, pretty much going through the same fucking level, because a lot of these levels are very, very similar in design. It's like Control-Z, Control-V, Control-Z, Control-V. It's either generic jungle setting, generic dark building setting, or generic water setting. Like there's not really any. There's like or generic underground setting. There's not a whole lot of variation in the designs of any of these levels. Probably the best designed level in my opinion is the in the Genesis version of Jurassic Park with the boat scene, because the river raft T-Rex encounter from the book is not something that's been very much adapted. There's a whole ride off of it, vaguely based off of it, not totally based off of it, but it's the closest rendition we got. And then the next one is this, which is really cool. It's not, again, it's not a great level, but it's a cool level because you're in the raft and you're flowing through shit and there's the T-Rex everywhere, and it's fucking awesome. But no, they just decided we're not going to do that for pretty much anything else. And then, a lot of these levels, too, are just so freaking massive and really easy to get lost in. Maybe not like the Chaos Continues. The levels are huge because they have lots of different sections, but it's more of a side-scroller, and the areas that you have to move around are pretty limited. So maybe it's not so hard to get lost in those, but like the Genesis version is really hard. It's really, really easy to get lost in because you're going through so many other areas and you're like falling through stuff, and you fall through branches, and then you're going through different corridors, and like every time you play you're going through a new area. Or how about in JP Rampage, the fucking aviary level, for example? What the fuck was that level? You're going through, and there's just, this is the largest fucking aviary I've ever seen in my life. It dwarfs the Jurassic World aviary that we see in that movie. There's so many different corridors and branches and bridges. Why the fuck are there pedestrian walking bridges in a fucking aviary for pteranodons? What is that? And then there's a million other pieces as well, because and then there's just like, again, like a 2 million pteranodons flying around in here. There's fucking raptors in here. There's copies flying everywhere, and there's this random ass army guys that are just shooting you like crazy. Why the fuck are the army guys not shooting down the pteranodons and the Dilophosaurs? Why are they shooting me? Fucking Alan Grant. There are probably the coolest element to these games, though, is the dino sequences. And now I'm not talking about like dino fights. I'm talking about when you actually get to play as the dinos. How about in JP Rampage? You get to just fucking ride a Gallimimus as Alan Grant. That's awesome. Where's that been in any of these games? I would love to ride a Gallimimus down a savannah past. And again, 2 million raptors shooting helicopters and army guys and Dilophosaurs. Like, you can just bulldoze your way through all that shit. The only thing that stops you is the very conveniently and really, really stupid ropes that the only reason that they even fucking exist is to knock you off the Gallimimus so that the level isn't too easy. What the fuck? Or even in again JP Rampage, there's a lot of cool like dino playing sequences. Or as well like the in the Genesis version, there's both Genesis versions I guess have this, but you could play as the Raptors and you get to go around and you get to attack the people. That's so cool. The Raptor sequence in the Genesis game though, that did make an honorable mention on the hardest video game levels list, because that is a fucking very difficult sequence to get through. So just know that if you're planning on playing this game. But it's really cool that they did that, because obviously we don't want to watch a movie with where we're the perspective of the dinosaurs hunting the humans down, but it's cool to play as a dinosaur, and I'd like to do more of that. Where we can play as the Triceratops or the Pteranodons next. So I can pick up fucking Alan Grant as soon as he's super close to exiting the fucking aviary and beating the fucking level and just fucking flying him up like it means nothing. And even though the army guys are shooting at me and shooting at Alan Grant, that doesn't fucking matter. Even though, because apparently he gets a million levels of plot armor every time he fucking touches me, and I'm gonna fly back up to the nest, and then he's gotta do it all again because the enemies respawned. Why? Or maybe I could play as a raptor and fucking butt fuck everything. Because that's all the raptors do in that game. Probably the only other segment, last part here that I want to talk about is in the SNES Jurassic Park game. When you go in buildings, I don't know if this game was meant to be horror or not, but those sequences when you go in the innovation center, you go in the bunkers, you need to do stuff to progress in the game. Those are some of the craziest, scariest sequences that I've ever seen in a video game. They rival FNAF. And not just bad FNAF. They rival the good horror of FNAF in scary level. Which I did not expect. And I know I was really scared to enter. The first time I went in there, it's oh my god, we're playing first person, and then we gotta go in and hunt. And you just turn a corner, and the raptors and the Dilophosaurs in there, they're not programmed to attack you until you're a certain distance away from them. So you enter the building and you turn, and you just see it standing there, and it just looks at you like this. And it is the scariest shit ever, and it is so fucking funny to watch somebody play it. But it's not fun to be actually playing it. Or how about when you turn a corner, there's just a raptor standing there looking like this at you? Or I guess it'd be looking like this. And you'd be like... And then you die because, the reaction times do not work in this game because it's old. Yeah. Anyways, it's my thoughts on this collection. I've heard a lot of bad things about it, and to be honest, a lot of those points are valid. They left out some games that I think should have been included if you're going to call it a classic games collection. I think the Sega Master System games, they didn't include at all in this, which was really, really weird. Maybe there's some licensing issues there, but then why would you have the Genesis games in there? I don't know. But also, I don't know, it's not... Yeah, it's a classic games collection, but it really just refines everybody's memory of movie ports of games being bad, especially at this time. And unless you're a Jurassic Park fan, which I am, so I did find some enjoyment out of these games, I don't know if you would. The playing as dinosaur sequences might be the most fun you'll have. Or the indoor building sequences on the SNES game might be all the fun you have. Which is not a bad thing. They are fun sequences. Or scary sequences that scare the shit out of me, and I'll never want to play again. But there's that. So That being said, this whole collection, my final score, is probably going to have to be a good 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10. Without that, guys, it's going to do it for this video. If you've played any of these games, I'd love to know. Plus the handheld, I didn't even get into those. They're pretty much the same as their console counterparts. So if you want thoughts on that or thoughts on the console games, let me know in the thoughts in the comment section down below. Until next time, though, guys, it's going to do it. Stay tuned for much more amazing content, including more game reviews and other awesome stuff. And until next time, see you guys later. Goodbye.